All right, so today we are taking a deep dive into Adlerian psychology. And we've got some really interesting material to work with, including these excerpts from a Japanese mental training text.
Yeah,
It seems like, uh, Adlerian psychology is something that's really taken root in Japan.
absolutely.
And it emphasizes things like, individual purpose and social connection.
Right.
And I'm really curious to see how these ideas are, being applied in a specifically Japanese context.
Yeah, it's fascinating because Adlerian psychology is so often talked about, in kind of Western terms. But to see it interpreted and utilized in Japan, I think offers us a really unique window into the ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump right in. One of the things that really sets Adler apart from, say, Freud or Jung
Hmm.
is this idea of purpose over cause.
Right.
Essentially, it's this idea that instead of, looking to the past for, explanations of our behavior,
Yeah.
Adlerian psychology really focuses on our current goals and how those goals shape our choices.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's about recognizing that we're not just products of our past experiences, but that we are active agents in shaping our own lives. And I think this Japanese text really takes that idea a step further, and it gives us some really practical tools for self-discovery and growth.
Yeah, like the life chart exercise.
Exactly.
It's essentially this visual mapping tool where you plot out, key moments and emotions from your past.
Yeah.
But the real magic happens when you use those insights to figure out where you are now and where you want to go next.
It's like taking inventory of your experiences, not to just dwell on the past, but to use them to equip yourself for the future.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's a crucial distinction, because it moves away from blaming our circumstances and it really empowers us to take responsibility for our own paths.
I'm curious, though, about this emphasis on encouragement that you see in Adlerian psychology. It's not just about, praising people, is it?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It goes much deeper than that. Adlerian encouragement is really about fostering a sense of belonging, capability, and contribution in others.
Okay.
It's about helping someone to believe in themselves and believe in their ability to make a difference in the world.
So it's less about empty praise and more about, like, building someone up from the inside out.
Exactly. And that brings us to another core concept in Adlerian psychology. And this one often gets, translated as community feeling or social interest. It's Gemeinschaftsgefühl.
Oh, yeah.
And it might sound a bit academic, but it's really just about recognizing that we're all interconnected, that our well-being is tied to the well-being of others.
I love that. It reminds me of that saying, it takes a village,
Uh-huh.
But on, like, a deeper level,
Yeah.
it's not just about needing help from others, but about recognizing our shared humanity and responsibility to each other.
Precisely. And this idea of Gemeinschaftsgefühl is especially relevant when we consider some of the challenges that are facing Japan today. You mentioned that the text explores this issue of lower self-affirmation rates among young people in Japan.
Yeah, that really jumped out at me.
Mm.
What are some of the factors that are contributing to that, and how are, Adlerian techniques being used to address it?
Well, one potential factor is, the cultural emphasis on collectivism and harmony,
Okay.
which can sometimes lead to individuals suppressing their own needs or feeling pressure to conform. And this is where Adlerian principles like encouragement and Gemeinschaftsgefühl really come into play. And, speaking of which, the text highlights this really fascinating project. It's called the Self-Affirmation 1.5 Million Up Project.
Wow.
And it's using these ideas to boost self-affirmation on a national level.
Wait, they have a whole national project focused on self-affirmation?
Yes,
That's incredible.
it's quite remarkable.
Tell me more about that.
Well, this project is built on a foundation of 6 core senses of self-affirmation. They are self-esteem, self-acceptance, self-efficacy, self-reliance, self-determination, and self-worth.
Got it.
And the text really emphasizes, cultivating these senses, both in individuals and in Japanese society as a whole, to create this stronger sense of self.
I'm really interested to see how they're applying those 6 senses,
Yeah.
in a practical way.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, I think it's important to address a common misconception about Adlerian psychology and this idea that it's all about positive thinking.
Right. It's not about, ignoring challenges or pretending everything's fine.
Yeah.
It's about acknowledging our struggles,
Yeah.
understanding our motivations, and fostering the courage to overcome obstacles.
So it's more about building resilience and developing healthy coping mechanisms
Mm.
than it is about, just slapping on a happy face.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that even, seemingly negative behaviors can stem from a lack of Gemeinschaftsgefühl and encouragement. And, the text really dives into this idea and suggests that instead of judging or blaming, we should try to understand the underlying needs that might be driving those behaviors.
Yeah, it's a powerful perspective shift. Okay, I'm ready to unpack those 6 senses of self-affirmation. Let's start with self-esteem. What does that actually look like in practice?
Well, the text offers some really interesting insights into how the concept of self-esteem is understood in Japan.
Yeah.
Rather than simply feeling good about yourself,
Yeah.
they focus on recognizing your inherent worth as a human being,
Okay.
regardless of, external achievements or comparisons.
That's fascinating, especially in a culture that so often emphasizes achievement and group harmony.
Right.
So it's less about boasting and more about, inner peace.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that you have value simply because you exist.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful foundation for everything else in life. And, from that inherent worth, that ties directly into the next sense, which is self-acceptance.
Okay.
And this is where things get really interesting.
Right.
Because the text encourages us to embrace ourselves fully,
Yeah.
including the parts that we might not always like. They even have this saying in the text.
Okay.
It's even monkeys fall from trees.
Oh, I love that saying.
Yeah.
It's like a good reminder that, everyone makes mistakes no matter how skilled or, experienced they are.
Right.
So it's about embracing those imperfections instead of trying to hide them.
Exactly. It's about letting go of that need to be perfect, which I think the text suggests can be especially strong in Japanese culture.
Yeah.
This idea that striving for an unattainable ideal can actually lead to self-criticism and a fear of failure.
It's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work.
Exactly.
So instead of trying to be perfect, it's about being fully...
Yeah.
The world quirks an element.
Precisely. Now, the third sense, self-efficacy, is all about believing in your ability to succeed. And the text suggests that, this sense of efficacy is really closely linked to motivation and perseverance. It's that feeling of, I can do this even when faced with challenges.
So how do we cultivate that, I can do this attitude?
Yeah.
Especially when we're feeling discouraged or overwhelmed.
Well, the text emphasizes the importance of small wins.
Okay.
They suggest breaking down big goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
Right.
And this allows you to, you create this sense of momentum and accomplishment as you go, which naturally boosts your belief in yourself.
Like climbing a mountain.
Yeah.
You don't focus on the daunting summit.
Right.
You just take it one step at a time.
Exactly.
And each step forward builds your confidence for the next one.
And as your confidence grows, so does your self-reliance.
Oh, yeah.
The fourth sense, this is about trusting your own judgment.
Yeah.
Being able to make decisions without needing constant approval from others.
This resonates with me. I think in many cultures, there's such a strong pressure to conform or, seek validation from others.
Right.
So how does this Japanese approach encourage kind of breaking free from that?
Well, the text encourages practicing independent thinking and problem solving.
Okay.
It's about building that inner compass, that trust in your own intuition.
Yeah.
And ability to navigate challenges.
So it's not about becoming a lone wolf.
Yeah.
It's about having that inner strength and knowing you can handle things even when you need to go your own way.
Right. And that independent thinking leads into the fifth sense, which is self-determination.
Okay.
This is where we really take the reins of our lives.
Right.
The text emphasizes setting clear goals that align with our values
Yeah.
and creating a plan to achieve them.
Okay.
It's about feeling in control of our own destinies.
I can see how that sense of control could be really empowering,
Yeah.
especially in a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable.
Right.
So by taking ownership of our goals, we're essentially creating a sense of order and direction in our own lives.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the final sense, self-worth. This is about recognizing your inherent value and deservingness, regardless of, external achievements or validation.
Okay.
It's really the foundation of self-love and acceptance.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful message, especially for young people who are often bombarded with messages about what they should be or, what they should achieve.
Absolutely. And the text highlights this really unique practice for cultivating these six senses.
Okay.
It's called the Image Training Sentence Completion Notebook.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
It's this technique where you write down a series of, specific sentences that are designed to kind of clarify your goals,
Yeah.
identify obstacles, and build a plan for success.
Okay.
It's really fascinating blend of visualization and self-reflection.
So it's like having a written dialogue with yourself,
Yeah, right.
prompting you to think deeply about your aspirations and the steps you need to take to achieve them.
Exactly. And the text provides a framework for these sentences.
Okay.
Starting with identifying your goals,
Yeah.
then outlining the benefits of achieving them.
Got it.
Then you consider potential obstacles,
Huh.
your current situation,
Yeah.
and new methods you can try.
I love the practicality of that.
Yeah.
It's not just about dreaming big. It's about creating a tangible roadmap for making those dreams a reality.
Right.
But I'm also curious about this emphasis on sharing your goals with others.
Yeah.
The text mentions that too, right?
Yes, and I think that's a really insightful point. They suggest that, sharing our aspirations with trusted friends or family members can actually increase accountability.
Yeah.
And it can provide a really valuable support system.
That makes sense. It's like having a cheerleading squad to encourage you and help you stay on track.
Right.
And speaking of support systems, I want to circle back to this idea of Gemeinschaftsgefühl.
Yeah.
We talked about it earlier, in the context of Japanese society. But how can we cultivate that sense of community feeling in our own lives?
Well, the text suggests that it starts with simply being present and engaged with the people around us. It's about actively listening, showing empathy, and offering support without judgment.
So it's about creating those safe and supportive spaces where people feel heard and understood.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that even small acts of kindness and connection can make a big difference in fostering a sense of community.
One of the things that struck me about the Self-Affirmation 1.5 million up project is that it's not just about individual growth.
Right.
It's about creating a more positive and supportive society as a whole.
That's a really insightful observation. And it speaks to the heart of Adlerian psychology, which recognizes that interconnectedness of individual well-being and societal well-being.
So the ripple effect.
Yeah.
By fostering self-affirmation in individuals, we're essentially contributing to a more positive and compassionate world.
Precisely. Now, something else that caught my attention was the text discussion of the role parents play in shaping a child's sense of self-worth.
Yes, that's so important. What are some of the ways that parents can encourage self-affirmation in their children from a young age?
Well, the text highlights the importance of unconditional love and acceptance.
Yeah.
It's about letting children know that they are loved and valued for who they are, regardless of their achievements or mistakes.
So it's about creating that safe and nurturing environment where kids feel free to be themselves without fear of judgment or rejection.
Exactly. And it's about focusing on effort and progress rather than just outcomes.
Okay.
Praising a child's hard work and dedication, even if they haven't achieved, the desired result.
Right.
Helps them to develop a growth mindset and a belief in their ability to learn and improve.
That makes sense. It's about shifting to focus from, being good to getting better.
Right.
And what about the role of education? How can schools incorporate these Adlerian principles to foster self-affirmation among students?
Well, the text suggests creating a classroom environment that is supportive, inclusive, and collaborative. It's about fostering a sense of belonging and encouraging students to support one another.
Okay.
It's also important to focus on developing students' strengths and talents, helping them to recognize their unique abilities and feel confident in their capacity to succeed.
So it's about creating a learning environment where students feel safe to take risks, make mistakes, and learn from one another.
Right.
It's about celebrating individuality while also fostering that sense of community.
Exactly. And the text also emphasizes the importance of self-reflection.
Okay.
They encourage students to engage in practices like journaling or mindfulness to gain a deeper understanding of themselves, their motivations, and their values.
It's fascinating to see how these principles can be woven into, every aspect of life.
Right.
From parenting to education to, our own personal growth journeys.
Absolutely. And, while the text focuses on a Japanese context, these principles are truly universal. They offer valuable insights for anyone seeking to cultivate a stronger sense of self and to live a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
I completely agree. As we've been exploring all these concepts, I keep coming back to this idea of encouragement. The Japanese text really emphasizes it, but in a way that's kind of different from the typical Western understanding.
Yeah, for sure. The text really makes a clear distinction between encouragement and praise.
Okay.
Praise often focuses on outcomes or comparisons, but encouragement is more about recognizing effort, progress, and potential.
So instead of saying, like, you're so smart,
Yeah.
you might say, wow, I can see how much effort you put into that, or
Yeah.
you really have a talent for this.
Exactly. And, they highlight this fascinating technique in the text called omission of evaluation,
Right.
which basically involves like refraining from giving any judgment or evaluation at all,
Even positive ones.
even positive ones.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
So it's about letting the person's actions speak for themselves
Hmm.
and allowing them to experience that intrinsic satisfaction
Right.
without needing the external validation.
Exactly. It's a very subtle but powerful shift in perspective that can really foster, greater self-reliance and motivation.
Yeah.
And this actually ties back to the idea of horizontal relationships,
Okay.
which is another key concept in Adlerian psychology.
Remind me about horizontal relationships. What makes them so important?
It's about treating all individuals as equals, regardless of their age or status or achievements.
Okay.
It's about fostering a sense of mutual respect and collaboration,
Yeah.
rather than, viewing relationships as hierarchical.
So instead of approaching interactions from a position of authority or superiority, it's about creating that level playing field where everyone feels valued and respected.
Precisely. And, this ties back to the idea of Gemeinschaftsgefühl,
Hmm.
because when we see ourselves as equal members of a community, we're more likely to feel a sense of belonging and responsibility towards one another.
Yeah. It's like weaving a tapestry where each thread is equally important,
Yeah.
In creating the overall beauty and strength of the fabric.
Yeah.
And speaking of strength, the Japanese text also talks about the importance of self-responsibility.
Yes, self-responsibility is really a cornerstone of Adlerian psychology.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we have the power to choose our thoughts, feelings, and actions,
Yeah.
and that we are ultimately responsible for the consequences of those choices.
So it's not about blaming others or making excuses for our circumstances,
Right.
but rather about taking ownership of our lives and creating the future that we desire.
Exactly. And, that can feel incredibly empowering because it reminds us that we are not passive victims of our circumstances. We're active agents in shaping our own destinies.
Now, as we wrap up our deep dive, I want to bring up one last point that really resonated with me.
Okay.
The text talks about this challenge of low self-affirmation rates among Japanese youth.
Yeah.
And how this national project aims to address it. But it also emphasizes that this isn't just a Japanese issue.
Right.
Many young people around the world struggle with self-doubt and a lack of confidence.
That's a really important observation. And it speaks to the universal relevance of these principles,
Yeah.
While the cultural context may differ, the underlying human needs for belonging, connection, and purpose are shared by all of us.
So regardless of where we live or, what challenges we face, these Adlerian concepts offer valuable tools for cultivating a stronger sense of self.
Absolutely.
And creating a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
I think the Japanese perspective, with its emphasis on practical techniques and, a deep understanding of the cultural nuances, adds a really enriching layer to these concepts.
I couldn't agree more. This deep dive has been incredibly insightful, and I know I'll be carrying these ideas with me long after we finish recording.
As will I.
And for you, our listener, we hope this exploration of Adlerian psychology and the unique insights from this Japanese text has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to continue your own journey of self-discovery and growth. Until next time, happy diving.